All right, everyone, welcome back. This is The Last Defense. This is DC here joining you, bringing you some news updates about some things taking place around the world. Of course, I've been following the Middle East quite a bit over the last few sessions here, and something very, very exciting has happened over the last 24 hours, which I'd like to share with everyone here today. So before we get started, I do appreciate all of the love and support that has been shown to this channel as it is very, very new. If you like what you see on this channel, feel free to like, share, subscribe, comment, and subscribe to the podcast as well. Me and my colleague Mike B are doing quite a bit to try to get involved in a lot of the geopolitical commentary around the world, and hopefully it is of some use to everyone that's joining in on the show. So that said, we're going to go straight over to the first bit of news here, the one that I'd like to share with you today. And it's quite interesting. What we notice here is that we have some things taking place with Iran, of course. Iran has been fighting the war with the United States, kind of fighting it off, if you want to say, that much. But one of the things that we notice here is that they have announced recently that they're going to join the BRICS Development Bank, and that is going to bring about some quite interesting developments for, Tehran. And so the central bank governor of Iran has said and announced that it will be joining the new development bank. So this is a development lender established by the BRICS group of nations. So these are Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. So the central bank governor, Abdel Nasser Hemati, sorry, he said this in a state media report published on Wednesday ahead of the BRICS finance meeting in India. So, of course, this meeting is taking place in India, and they host it generally in different areas, whether it's Moscow or, New Delhi or Hyderabad, or, well, whichever place they choose of the different nations, Shanghai, wherever it is. So what they talk about here is a lot of this stuff comes about after Iran remains under US sanctions, global sanctions as well. And they're, of course, this is Reuters, so they're saying it has yet to reach a peace deal to end the current conflict with the US and Israel, giving Tehran added incentive to seek additional finance channels outside the dollar system. So the good news is that what they're saying is that because Iran has not formally agreed to a resolution with Israel and the United States, which could potentially cripple its ability to strike out partnerships outside of a certain framework, this is going to allow Tehran to actually go out and do this because there is no agreement. There is no memorandum of understanding. There is no concession that they need to make or anything like that. So what they're saying later on is that the New Development Bank's corporate communications division told Reuters it could not confirm information regarding the membership. Now, this comes after Iran joined BRICS in 2024 as the group expanded in a move aimed at deepening economic ties among emerging economies. It has since been made clear that it's desired to become a member and shareholder of the NDB. And this bank, was set up in 2015 to finance infrastructure and sustainable development projects. It has since expanded its membership to include the UAE, Egypt, and other emerging economies. So we need to look at this, and this is going to tell us quite a bit about what's going on. The reason why this is going to be important is because we notice that, of course, after wars come the development of infrastructure. I believe that the United States said, arguably wanted to create some kind of ability to get involved in financing the reconstruction of Iran, or just take it over altogether. Now, with this taking place here, what I see is that Iran, because they were getting involved in 2024, it points to the conclusion, the logical conclusion, that it was up to it was in the United States plans or interests to derail this funding and to derail any kind of integration into a new payment system, because this prevents it from receiving any kind of sanctions that hold, and it also prevents them from developing if the United States remains involved in Iran's finances under the JCPOA. Now that Iran's moving to another type of system, the New Development Bank, and additionally going into the BRICS fold, this is allowing the fast, wiring and transfer and receiving of payments that are going to make it instrumental for Iran to develop as a nation, a sovereign nation, and aligned with the global south, or at least we can say, the developing world. It is quite interesting that, under the auspices, especially of Russia and China, this is going to allow Iran to actually progress much faster than it would be if it worked solely under the JCPOA. So this war that's taking place right now under Trump is an existential war, but it's not an existential war for Iran. It's an existential war for the United States. And the reason why I say this is because once Iran's out of the financial payment system, as it has been sanctioned for 10 years, and there's no longer an incentive for Iran to be under the thumb of anyone in the Western world. Now, what this means for Iran, we're going to look at some of the other aspects of this bank in order to get a bit more clarity on what that insinuates. So we go here. We talk about some of the other things related to the NDB. Now, the NDB, of course, we talked about some of the things that it's for emerging markets and developing countries. And furthermore, it focuses on these key aspects: infrastructure, sustainability, emerging markets, but even going down further, clean energy and energy efficiency, transport infrastructure, water and sanitation, digital infrastructure, environmental protection, and social infrastructure. So this is very much a direct competitor to the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, things of that nature. European Central Bank is directed more so towards Europe as a whole under the European Union. But we look at this, we talk about the fact that the NDB, when Iran goes into this kind of takes the shackles off of what Iran can actually do, and it aligns itself much better with allies that it knows it can trust and that it can do business with. So once you're no longer trading in dollars, not only are you going to be able to sell oil and gas in dollars, outside of dollars, you can sell it in yuan or in rubles, things of that nature. This facilitates its ability to do so. And then in infrastructure development, you're no longer under sanctions. So now you can just go ahead, get resources and materials from Russia and China, other countries that are allied within the bank. And additionally, you can rebuild much faster. When you need to get financing for certain projects, you can get it immediately. There's no longer any talk about, oh, well, we're not going to be able to provide you with any nuclear energy. Now we have the ability to create our own infrastructure, even if we need to use coal or, hydroelectric, those types of projects will get funded. Now, I remember quite a while back doing a lot of research into the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. Now it seems like this new development bank is going to be kind of like another, a complement to that entire structure. We can look at some of the characters that are actually within the new development bank. Let's go ahead, look here. So we have initially the founding fathers, if you want to call it that: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Keep in mind that the president of the New Development Bank is Dilma Rousseff. Remember that in 2014, I believe. Don't quote me on that. She was president of Brazil. She was ousted in a coup by then Jair Bolsonaro. And since then, Lula da Silva has actually come back into power in Brazil, thankfully, and been able to rectify that situation and prevent, the sale of Petrobras and the control of its oil and gas infrastructure. We look at some of the new members here. This is going to be very, very crucial, because when we look at this entire war, this is not a war that many of these members wanted to get involved in, and it's actually shaken things up. But what's going to happen is, I think that many of these member states that have been attacked by Iran, and conversely have attacked Iran as well, they're going to realize that they have more shared interest in working with each other rather than hosting military bases in the United States, from the United States, and additionally acting as a vassal state to others. So we have Bangladesh. They became a member in 2021. The United Arab Emirates. This is key, crucial, because they became a member in 2021 on October 4th. Egypt, 2023. Algeria, 2025. Uzbekistan, this year, 2026. This is just 2 months ago. And so we have prospective members here. Uruguay and Colombia. Colombia just had a right-wing president come in, so that's probably not going to help their case here. I think when this was prospective, it was when they were under a more left-leaning government. You have Ethiopia, Angola, and Zimbabwe. These, of course, will be quite easily fitting into the New Development Bank, as Ethiopia has had strong ties to China for decades and has received quite a bit of infrastructure already, including I think they had a high-speed railway or a light rail system that goes through the country. Zimbabwe recently got an airport, one of the biggest airports in Africa, actually. And Zimbabwe should be able to, do that and, just expand their own infrastructure. Angola, with their oil and gas, they should be able to do quite well in their respective parts as well. So we look at some of the shareholders. Let's also understand what this means and implies for Iran, because Iran does want to become a shareholder of the whole operation. So, of course, we have different levels of shareholding. All of the founding members have 18.72%. So they have each pledged and they have subscribed capital of 10,000 million, which is going to be about, if I do my maths correctly, 10 billion. This is 10 billion from India, 10 billion from China. South Africa has also contributed the same. So this leaves, other member states that have joined. They're going to have just kind of like minor amounts of it. 614 million from Algeria, which is probably the largest. Well, no, Bangladesh, 942 million. We have Egypt, which is 1,196 million, and Uzbekistan's put in quite a bit, but they only have a percentage total of 0.23 or not 23. UAE is putting quite a bit as well, but we see the biggest shareholder outside of the big five is going to be Egypt. So Egypt has a strong investment in this new development bank, and they have been largely neutral in the entire conflict, and they have not also been wanting to escalate tensions with the entire matter because Egypt needs the financing. So when we start following the money, we're going to start noticing that a lot of these countries are not going to want to escalate the crisis. And with Turkey also being part and parcel with a lot of this, Turkey playing many kinds of sides in the whole warfare situation or the theater. I think that with Saudi Arabia and Pakistan and many of the countries in the Middle Eastern region, they're going to want to cooperate. And I think that once you start seeing the money, where it's actually going to, it's going to be crucial for them to work with Iran. So I do see a de-escalation with the regional members, and furthermore, hopefully, between Saudi Arabia and Yemen, because I do not believe that Yemen is a member of, the BRICS economic Silk Road route. And so by doing this, We need to look at who's going to be working together, who's going to still have their grievances, and so on and so on. So we're going to come back to more information that I can share with you. We can go into the next bit because there's an issue about the payment system. So BRICS Pay is a payment ecosystem. Now, this is going to rival SWIFT and other types of payment systems by closely integrating everything within one fold under BRICS. Now, people have always speculated that BRICS was kind of like an institution non grata, or it wasn't going to be able to pay off. But the very fact that the United States started a unilateral war against Iran at the height of its entry into the BRICS payment system, it shows that there is a deep understanding that the US has that should Iran get involved in it, especially now that it's getting involved in the middle of a war. In addition, they've won the war essentially against the United States and Israel, although the latter two do not want to give up. But we're seeing here now, we're talking about the potentiality of Iran to join this payment system and to become a contributing member and break the petrodollar system itself. Now, many people have always speculated and said, oh, well, this isn't going to happen. Oh, this is going to take forever. This is just theory. The US will never lose its global dominance. With the Strait of Hormuz gone now, with the Bab el-Mandeb Strait gone now, and then, of course, with the Suez Canal under Egypt, you better believe that they're going to be trading in things other than US dollars. And this is going to create a controversial shift away from the Western payment system. And with Donald Trump also endangering his relationships with Canada and additionally with the European Union, more and more people are seeing that it's going to be a basket of currencies. I do remember the Bancor a long time ago under the IMF talked quite a bit about the Bancor, which would be like a basket of currencies used as a kind of international settlement or payment system. But we'll get into that for another topic. But I'm excited about this. And one of the things that I'd think about is when we talk about geopolitics and the acts of war, there's always a financial incentive to wage war on other countries. So when a person wages war on another country, it is usually due to the fact that there is a geopolitical tie to a financial system or a commodity system, a material source. And anyone who's read Das Kapital or anything like that, The Wealth of Nations, they know this. They're very aware of this. So when we look at this, we talk about the classic five, of course. For the BRICS Pay system, this is the payment ecosystem. And this actually involves quite more people, like a lot more different people within the fold. So in the 15 years, the bloc has doubled. By 2024. The UAE, Iran, Egypt, Ethiopia, Indonesia, and Saudi Arabia have joined. Around a dozen more states hold partner status, and 32 countries have officially applied to join. This is no longer just an association of 5 states, but a serious economic bloc covering more than a third of world GDP. This is incredible. These states launched, of course, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. And ironically, Russia is still the world's 6th largest economy, despite being under massive sanctions. They've managed to be self-sufficient and strike out new partnerships. This is very, very important to note. And China, they say China is the world's 2nd economy. I disagree with that. I would say by purchase power parity, they are number 1, and that is in turn the biggest, most salient metric that people need to use in order to understand who economically is the most viable in the world. As far as productivity goes, as far as the ability to buy goods and services with less money and have a greater quality of life, China is definitely at the top. And we look at this, we see some of the new full members. Between 2024 and 2026, the UAE, Iran, Egypt, Ethiopia, Indonesia, and Saudi Arabia all joined as members of BRICS Pay. Now, this is very important to understand. The reason why I say this is because we noticed that this war, because this was unilaterally launched by the United States and Israel to break up this association right here, because of the members who actually joined, there was no fighting prior to all of this. Iran did launch those attacks against, Kuwait, Bahrain, the UAE, Qatar, and other things, because it knew that if it didn't attack these member states who were housing military bases, then the US would become a persistent thorn in its side. And of course, while these are all members of BRICS Pay, it's much easier to apologize to a friend than to continue making war with an enemy, especially a constant threat. Once the threat is neutralized, and dare I may say, the speculative, side of me may want to say that if Iran is able to smash the current global, the current order within the Middle East, it will give much more of an impetus in the near future, not the distant future, for these countries to integrate. Imagine this. Think about all of the different countries that have been attacked. Lives were lost, which is terrible. Infrastructure has been destroyed. But what happens if they rebuild that infrastructure under the BRICS payment system instead of the US dollar? Think about that for a second. And then they say, okay, in order for us to avoid this situation in the future, we're going to go back and we're going to just simply trade in our economic payment system rather than deal with US dollars, so that we are no longer subject to the rule of the US dollar financial system. This is the end of the petrodollar, which was struck in, I believe it was 1974, under Richard Nixon with Saudi Arabia. You trade in oil and gas in US dollars. We give you financial and economic system incentives, as well as military protection. Now that the military protection is gone, and additionally, there is no economic incentive to keep trading in dollars, they're going to switch to a basket of currencies under the BRICS Pay system. Imagine if that happens, what it's going to do to the US dollar. Now, this is a very real threat to the US hegemony around the world. And furthermore, Iran is kind of like that linchpin that once it was pulled out, it destroyed the global economic order. Look at what's going on in the world. We have massive, inflation in countries around the world. Price of oil and gas has gone up substantially. We are nearing the winter time, which is going to be the true test of all of this. Once people are using liquid natural gas, and they realize that it's not going to be as available to them as it used to be, it's going to be a very dire winter for a lot of people around the world. Additionally, when we talk about payment for oil and gas, shipping routes, and other things like that, once the fire goes out in the Middle East, it would be better for them to be under one accord with a different geopolitical hegemony, which is a shared one, under shared goals under this new system. And this will prevent a lot of these accidents from taking place, because there will be more diplomatic solutions, win-win solutions, as the Chinese have always said. And we want to also look at some of the other aspects about this. So maybe under this BRICS Pay system, we look at Iran's section here. So it says Iran, for whom BRICS Pay is especially important. Iran has been disconnected from SWIFT since 2018 due to US sanctions. Remember, the JCPOA was in 2015. Once Trump was back into power, he put those sanctions back on. And that was from 2016 to 2020 when Trump was in office, the first term. For Iranian business and citizens, BRICS Pay is not just convenience, but a fix for the basic problem of access to international payments. Iranian authorities call the project a top priority of foreign economic policy. Currency would be, their currency is the Iranian rial. Now, why is this so important? We just spoke about it. The BRICS Pay system, once they implement that, once they become a member of the New Development Bank, all of its financial issues are solved. If it needs to trade, it trades in the system that works. It's no longer a part of, the sanctions imposed on it by Western nations. It can no longer needs to care about sanctions from Western nations. It works with its Eastern partners. Sorry, need to get my words out. And then additionally, it allows itself to heal the destruction that has taken place with its allies in the Middle East, should they choose more to join the side of BRICS Pay rather than the US dollar. Because the US dollar is in a very, very rough, financial situation right now. The United States is 40 trillion in debt. It is past the 40 trillion mark. The inflation has gone up very much so. Its strategic petroleum reserves they're also at their lowest since, I believe it was 1983. And this spells economic disaster. And if you're thinking like a Middle Eastern nation, you don't want to be on a sinking ship. You want to jump ship to something better. That is precisely what I predict, or what I feel is going to take place with the Iran's involvement in the BRICS Pay system. Now, one other thing that I want to note, we talk a little bit about a policy paper that was taken from the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies. This is in Singapore. This is under the Nanyang Technical University, Singapore. And there was a fellow, Ezekiel Julsham, I believe that's the way you pronounce his name. They spoke a little bit about Iran's pivot to BRICS. They said it was a high-stakes gamble that, in the best-case scenario, would allow Tehran to survive economically and diplomatically without the West. Yet these payoffs remain hypothetical scenarios impeded by BRICS institutional deficiencies. Now, this is very, very disputed because Singapore is very much a Western ally. Where still closely Iranian relations with BRICS exacerbate Western suspicions of an anti-US alliance of again, Western-dominated policy paper. Let's just get straight into it and avoid a lot of the, I guess, their version of propaganda. We need to get to the core facts. At the October BRICS summit in Russia, Iran made overtures of cooperation with significant implications for its foreign policy. Iranian President Mahmoud Pezeshkian attended the summit and personally met Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping. The following speculation that Iran and Russia are finalizing a new comprehensive partnership agreement, deepening strategic and economic ties. It also recalled a similar 25-year Iran-China cooperation agreement signed in 2021. Other preliminary meetings with BRICS stakeholders before the summit discussed an Iranian proposal for a BRICS spatial data infrastructure program and greater energy cooperation. So, if BRICS, for example, were to finance a data center in Iran after this war blows over, and they're able to help Iran with artificial intelligence, smart grid technology, other things that would help Tehran and other major cities in the country develop quickly. It would also help them to manage their energy grid, which is important for Iran because it has to manage desalination plants. It has to manage vast expanses with a limited amount of nuclear and fossil fuel powered energy plants. What we need to look at, if I can go back into this one. Okay. The policy paper just disappeared. Okay. Well, what we're going to see and what we're going to say about, we look at some of the main things. What I would like to just come back to, and I do apologize for this. It seems like it's gone to another paper. But, oh, there it is. It's back. Okay. Let's carry on. They talk about the axis of the aligned. Russia has used its BRICS chair role at the summit to reinforce the global south. And I do believe this paper came out in 2025. It came out to reinforce the global south solidarity, reshaping BRICS as an alternative to Western-led institutions such as the World Bank. That's what we spoke about earlier. This summit's Kazan Declaration outlined proposals such as the BRICS Cross-Border Payments Initiative and a BRICS Commodity Exchange, which is going to be crucial, which would allow trade and financial transactions in BRICS currencies, potentially circumventing Western sanctions and US-denominated trade, commodities or oil and gas. Keep this in mind. This is also going to be gold and silver, so strengthening the financial backing of any central bank planning through gold and silver, and also access to other types of materials, other types of commodities that are important. So after that, we then go into, let's see here. It says that Iran could restart international petroleum exports, confining them to BRICS member states if implemented. Russia and Iran have already announced the new Shatab Mir interbank system. So Mir, I remember back in the day, was a payment system launched by Russia, which would be their version of SWIFT. And this allowed Iranians to withdraw Russian rubles from Russian ATMs. So in the spirit of Southern multilateralism, the BRICS-led New Development Bank is expected to play a more significant role in offering condition-free and low-interest rate loans to developing states. This could assist Iran in attaining critically needed investment. In September, Pezeshkian said that Iran requires at least 100 billion USD in foreign investment to reduce unemployment and 31.7% inflation rates, which was impossible given Western sanctions. This also explains the Iranian interest in joining the New Development Bank. Now, this paper that had come out last year is now a reality. This is taking place. Once this gets the green light and goes ahead, then things will become more integrated and more fluid. So BRICS also grants Iran the platform to lobby the global south to end its diplomatic isolation. Another key point. Aside from meetings with Russian and Chinese leaders at the summit, Pezeshkian also held bilateral meetings with Indian, Egyptian, and South African leaders. Pezeshkian also met Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi for the first time, discussed joint trade corridors and the Chabahar port development, even proposed an Iranian state to visit to India. Now, remember Chabahar, I do believe it was bombed during this whole conflict. This is another thing that was a target that the United States attacked when it was fighting with Iran, and this is why it launched so many missiles. The US wants to dismantle the interconnected infrastructure between Iran and the rest of the BRICS Development Bank and its member states. And it's doing this to try to isolate Iran, and because it wants to prevent any threats to US dollar hegemony. This is all now becoming the United States' worst nightmare. And the reason why I say that is because it is important to note that should Iran go ahead with this, it no longer answers to sanctions. It no longer has to deal with an inability to trade in oil and gas in US dollar. It can no longer be restricted from financial institutions around the world. With its BRICS members, it can then trade freely with them, and it can use diplomacy to heal its rift with member states that are located in the Middle East. So this is going to now, this is the multipolar shift from the West to the East. And everything that we see in the world nowadays seems to kind of evidence that. But I'm going to leave it there. If you want to, give your input or your feedback on this, please let me know what you think about this. What do you think that this implies for Iran and the global South as well? Do you think that they're going to be able to make some heavy strides in this, or is it going to take place only after the war ends and the US and Israel back off, which I think they are doing at this point because they've run out of munitions and they don't have any strategic petroleum reserves. The SPR is completely tapped out. It's gone past the critical mark, and it's not wintertime yet. So this is a really bad situation. So I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to TLD. And thank you so much for joining today. I really appreciate your time and energy on this. So until next time, speak your mind, defend the truth, and keep your sanity. Bye now.